When most people picture depression, they picture something that stops you, something that makes it impossible to get out of bed. That takes away your ability to function, to work, to show up. Depression, in the popular imagination, is the visible collapse. The person who can no longer maintain the basics of ordinary life. But there is another version of depression that almost no one talks about. And the reason no one talks about it is that it doesn't look like depression at all. It looks like someone who gets up every morning, who answers every email, who shows up to every meeting, fulfills every obligation, and maintains a life that, from the outside, appears not just functional but often impressive. It looks like someone who is fine, who would be described by everyone around them as fine, who might even describe themselves as fine, because the word has become so elastic, so emptied of meaning, that it now covers everything from genuine well-being to the kind of low-grade suffering that has been running so long it feels like the default setting of a life. Today, we're looking at 10 habits that seem completely normal, that might look like being tired or practical or simply how you are, but that psychology tells us are consistent signs of high-functioning depression. This is not a diagnosis. It is a description. And if the description fits, it might be worth sitting with that for a moment longer than you usually allow yourself to. High-functioning depression is not a formal diagnostic term, but it describes a real and well-documented experience. The closest clinical category is persistent depressive disorder, sometimes called dysthymia, a form of depression that is less acute than a major depressive episode, but longer in duration, often lasting years. The defining feature is this: the person continues to function. They meet their obligations. They maintain their relationships, at least to a standard that doesn't raise alarms. They show up, and the depression runs underneath all of it, not as a crisis, but as a background condition. A persistent reduction in the capacity for pleasure, energy, motivation, and emotional engagement that is just mild enough to be normalized. This is what makes it so dangerous. Not because it is the most severe form of depression, it isn't, but because it is the form most likely to go unrecognized, untreated, and unnamed for years, sometimes decades. Because the person experiencing it does not believe they are depressed enough to deserve attention, and the people around them see nothing that suggests otherwise. Let's look at what it actually looks like, hiding in plain sight. Habit 1. Getting through the day, without actually being in it. The day happens, you move through it, tasks get completed, conversations happen, meals are eaten, obligations are met. But there's a quality to it, and this is difficult to describe to someone who hasn't experienced it, like watching your day happen from slightly behind your own eyes. You are there, technically. You are participating, but you're not quite in it. The engagement that would make the day feel like yours, rather than something you are merely administering, is absent. This is not laziness, and it is not distraction. It is a specific form of emotional disengagement that high-functioning depression produces. The capacity to perform all the actions of a life without the felt experience of living it. The mechanism continues. The meaning has gone quiet. If you've noticed that your days have a quality of being gotten through rather than lived, that you can reach the end of one and struggle to recall a single moment that felt fully real, this is worth paying attention to. Not because it means you're broken, but because it means the part of you that turns a day into your day has gone offline. And that part matters. Habit 2. Feeling tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. You sleep. Possibly a lot. Possibly more than before. And you wake up and the tiredness is still there. Not in your muscles or your eyes, but somewhere deeper. In the place where motivation lives, where initiative starts, where the energy to care about things is supposed to originate. This looks, from the outside, like being a tired person, needing more rest, not sleeping well enough. A medical issue may be worth checking, but there is a specific quality of exhaustion that belongs to depression and to depression alone. An exhaustion that is not about the body's need for rest, but about the mind's depletion of the resources that make engagement with life possible. Sleep restores the body. It does not restore the capacity for care, for interest, for the basic emotional fuel that makes getting through the day feel different from enduring it. If you are sleeping enough, or more than enough, and still waking up feeling like something fundamental hasn't been replenished, the deficit is not in your sleep. It is in what your sleep cannot reach. Habit 3. Losing interest in things that used to matter, but not dramatically. You didn't stop caring about the things you used to care about. There wasn't a moment where interest ended and disinterest began. It was more like a dimmer switch, so gradual that by the time you noticed, the room was already much darker than it used to be. The book you used to look forward to reading sits on the nightstand for months. The hobby you used to lose hours in now feels like more effort than it's worth. The plans that once generated excitement now generate something closer to neutral, not dread, not avoidance, just the absence of the pull that used to be there. This is called anhedonia, the reduced ability to experience pleasure, and in its subtle form, it is one of the most reliable indicators of depression. Not the dramatic loss of interest that announces itself, the quiet, gradual dimming that you accommodate by adjusting your expectations of what life is supposed to feel like. The thing that makes subtle anhedonia so easy to miss is that it doesn't feel like loss. It feels like growing up, like being practical, like not needing entertainment to feel okay. But there's a difference between genuine contentment and the normalized absence of pleasure. And the fact that they can look identical from the outside is exactly what makes this so invisible. Habit 4. Functioning well enough. That no one checks on you. You have, without intending to, built a life in which your functioning is the primary evidence people use to assess your well-being. They see you working, replying, showing up, managing, and they conclude that you are okay. Not because they don't care, but because you are giving them every reason to believe it. Your output is consistent. Your presence is reliable. Your fine is convincing enough that no one has reason to look more closely. And so no one checks. Not because you're not important to them, but because the system you've built, the functioning, is doing its job too well. It is not just managing your life. It is managing other people's perception of your life. This is one of the cruelest features of high-functioning depression. The better you function, the less visible the depression becomes. The more reliably you show up, the less anyone thinks to ask whether showing up is costing you something. The performance of okay becomes so seamless that it insulates you from the very attention that might help. If no one has asked you how you're really doing in a long time, that may not be because you're fine. It may be because you've gotten very good at making it look like you are. Habit 5. Defaulting to I'm fine, and meaning it, sort of. Someone asks how you are, you say fine, and it's not a lie. Not exactly. You're not in crisis. Nothing specific is wrong. You're managing, and managing is, by the standards you've set for yourself, a version of okay. But there's a distance between fine and actually well, between not in crisis and genuinely engaged with your life, between I'm managing and I'm experiencing my life as something I want to be in. Fine has become elastic enough to cover an enormous range, from genuine contentment to quiet despair. And high-functioning depression lives in the space where fine means I am not actively suffering in a way that would justify saying otherwise. The word does two things at once. It answers the question, and it closes the conversation. It satisfies the person asking without requiring the person answering to examine what fine actually means today. And as long as the word works, as long as it is accepted without follow-up, the distance between fine and well can grow indefinitely without anyone, including you, noticing. Habit 6. Making decisions based on what's easiest rather than what you want. What do you want for dinner? Whatever's easiest. What do you want to do this weekend? I don't know. Whatever you want. What would make you happy right now? I don't really know. The decisions are small. Individually, they mean nothing, but the pattern they form of consistently defaulting to the path of least resistance, of never quite being able to locate a preference strong enough to act on, tells a specific story. It tells the story of someone for whom the wanting has gone quiet, not in a dramatic, everything is meaningless way, in the more modest, more insidious way of simply not having enough energy to generate a preference. The capacity for desire, for actually wanting something rather than merely accepting what's available, requires a baseline of emotional investment that high-functioning depression gradually erodes. It's not that you can't decide. It's that deciding requires caring enough about the outcome to invest in it, and that caring has been running low for longer than you've been tracking. Habit 7. A low-grade irritability that doesn't have a clear source. The internet is slow. Someone doesn't reply quickly enough. A minor inconvenience that would normally register as exactly that, minor, and instead, something flares. Something sharp and slightly disproportionate that you recognize afterward as more than the situation called for. Irritability is one of the most commonly missed symptoms of depression because it doesn't match the public image. Depression is supposed to be sad, flat, withdrawn. It is not supposed to be snappish, impatient, or quick to frustrate. But research consistently shows that for many people, particularly those with longer duration, lower severity depression, irritability is not just present. It is sometimes the most visible symptom. The flatness of mood that depression produces does not only flatten joy, it also flattens the buffer, the emotional padding that normally sits between you and the minor frictions of daily life. When that padding is depleted, the minor frictions land harder, and the person experiencing it attributes the irritability to stress or tiredness or just having a bad day, never to the background condition that made the buffer unavailable in the first place. Habit 8. Imagining a future. You're genuinely looking forward to. There are things in the future, plans, events, milestones, things that are supposed to produce anticipation, and you are aware of them. You can point to them on the calendar and say, that's coming. But the felt sense of looking forward, the small, warm pull towards something ahead that makes the present feel like a bridge to something better, is missing, or so faint that you've stopped noticing its absence. This is not hopelessness in the dramatic sense. You don't believe the future will be bad. You just can't generate the feeling that it will be meaningfully different from the present. The future exists as a fact rather than a feeling, a schedule to be maintained rather than a horizon to be moved toward. Psychologists call this a contraction of the temporal horizon, the shrinking of the felt sense of future from something rich and imagined to something flat and procedural. It is one of the quieter features of depression and one of the most disorienting, because it doesn't feel like despair. It feels like realism, like being practical, like having grown out of the need to look forward to things. But there is a difference between not needing excitement and not being able to access it, and high-functioning depression often disguises the second as the first. Habit 9. Performing emotions that don't quite match what's happening inside. You laugh, and the laugh is real enough. You smile at the thing that's funny, respond with warmth when warmth is expected, express interest when someone shares something important to them. And the performance is not dishonest. It's more like the emotion is happening at the surface and the inside is running on a different frequency. The social response fires correctly. The internal experience is slightly out of sync with it. This gap between what you show and what you feel is something that many people with high-functioning depression describe as one of the most isolating aspects of the experience. Not because no one cares about them, but because the version of them that people interact with is slightly more engaged, slightly more present, slightly more alive than the version they experience from the inside. The people around you see the performance and believe it. Why wouldn't they? It's convincing. It's consistent. It's you, as far as they know. And the person inside, the one whose emotional thermostat is set a few degrees below what the social version is presenting, watches the gap widen without knowing how to close it. Habit 10. Knowing something is off, but not being bad enough to do anything about it. This is the one that keeps everything else on this list in place. You know, somewhere, not always consciously, not always articulately, you know that something is not right, that the way you've been experiencing your life is not the way it's supposed to feel, that the flatness, the tiredness, the absence of looking forward, the performative fine, they add up to something, and you can almost name it, but then you compare it to the version of depression you know, the version that can't function, that needs intervention, that is visible and dramatic and undeniable, and you conclude, that's not me. I'm still working, I'm still showing up, I'm still managing. Whatever this is, it's not bad enough to justify calling it what it might be. And so you keep going. Not because the problem isn't real, but because the threshold for taking it seriously has been set by the most extreme version of the condition. And you don't meet it. You are, by that measure, fine, but the threshold is wrong. Depression does not require collapse to be real. It does not require the inability to function to be present. It requires only the sustained reduction of something essential: joy, engagement, meaning, the felt sense of being alive rather than merely operational, and that reduction has been running for long enough that you've adjusted to it as the new normal. The fact that you're still managing is not proof that you're okay. It is proof that you haven't stopped, and those are not the same thing. 10 habits. None of them enough alone to stop your life. All of them enough together to slowly hollow it out. High-functioning depression is invisible precisely because the functioning is so convincing. The person who has it is often the last to recognize it, because the evidence they use to measure their own well-being is the same evidence that hides the condition, the productivity, the showing up, the managing. But managing is not thriving. Functioning is not flourishing. And the fact that you can get through a day does not mean that the day has given you anything back. If you recognized yourself in several of these habits, if the description fits more closely than you'd like to admit, I want to say something clearly. You do not have to earn the right to take this seriously. You do not need to wait until it gets worse. You do not need to collapse before you're allowed to say, this is real and I deserve attention for it. The threshold most people set for themselves, the bad enough threshold, is almost always set too high. It is set at the level of the visible collapse, the dramatic break, the moment when functioning fails. But that threshold is wrong, because by the time you reach it, you've been living with something real for a very long time, and the time in between, the months or years of quiet coping, is not a waiting room. It is your life, and it matters. If this described something familiar, sit with it. Talk to someone. Not because you're broken, but because you deserve to live in a life you can actually feel. Take care of yourself. We'll see you in the next one.